Hello and welcome tonight. $175,467 votes to defeat his closest rival, Wike of the People's Democratic Party, who polled 88,529 votes. PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar asked election tribunal to declare him as winner of the 2023 presidential election, as he and the PDP formally filed a petition against Bola Tinubu's victory. President-elect Bola Tinubu embarks on a trip to Europe to rest and plan his transition program ahead of his inauguration on May the 29th.
On business news tonight, Nigeria LNG Limited joins the United Nations group to reduce methane emissions and pursue decarbonization.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria's under-23 team, the Olympic Eagles, and their opponents, Guinea, settle for a goalless draw in the first leg of the under-23 Africa Cup of Nations final qualifying fixture in Abuja.
And from Abuja, the All Progressives Congress in Kano State demands review of the state governorship election result and immediate removal of a state INEC resident electoral commissioner.
And in international news from London, President Volodymyr Zelensky has visited Ukrainian troops in the Donetsk region to meet soldiers on the front line in Bakhmut.
Dr. Alex Otti of the Labour Party has won the Abia state governorship election after polling 175,467 votes to defeat his closest rival, Oke Ahiwe of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, who scored 88,529 votes. Now, the announcement of the result comes 4 days after the election, which held on Saturday, March the 18th, following a disagreement over the outcome of the poll in Obingwa local government area. Prior to that, the Labour Party was leading in the election, having won in 10 local government areas.
This election was contested. The candidates received the following votes: Wampa Emeka Michael, male, Party A, 1,528 valid votes. Ikechi Emenike, male, APC, 24091. Ibe Gregory Ikechukwu Charles, male, Abia, 18119. Oti Alex Chioma M LB, 175467. Opai Iro, male, NNPP, 2068 valid votes. Ahiwe Okechukwu Ambrose, male, PDP, 88529 valid votes. Enugu Prince Chibunna, male, ZLP, 1011 valid votes. That Oti Alex Chioma of Labour Party, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
As the final collation of results in the Abia state governorship election went on, the Labour Party candidate and his family, as well as supporters, watched with keen interest. And as the verdict was finally announced, it was jubilation all the way, with Mr. Alex Oti shortly after making his acceptance speech.
I see this victory as a call to service. Even as I come out of a bruising and long drawn-out campaign, I know that this is just the beginning of the journey. There's a lot of work to be done, and we must get all hands on deck to ensure that we take back our state and bring the much sought-after dividend of democracy. You voted us to serve you and not to be served. You voted us to alleviate your sufferings and not to compound and multiply them. This is a service that comes with unusually high sense of devotion and commitment, given our checkered history as a people. During my electioneering campaign, I traveled all nooks and crannies of Abia State, and that enabled me to have first-hand assessment of the needs and expectations of Abians. These are the basic things expected by the people for a responsible government to provide in order to unleash the potential inherent in the typically hard-working Abians. Based on my findings and those of my team members, it dawned on us that an immediate hands-on approach is required to hit the ground running and to ensure that we alleviate the sufferings of all Abians. I promise you that I will serve you as governor of all Abians and all citizens living in Abia, irrespective of clan, religious persuasion, or political leaning.
Meanwhile, the Abia State Governor Okezie Ikpeazu has congratulated the Labour Party governorship candidate and the state governor, that's the state governor-elect Alex Oti, over his victory. Now, in a statement, Governor Ikpeazu says Dr. Oti has fought a long battle over a very long period of time and deserves commendation for his staying power and resilience. He then urged the governor-elect to see his victory as a higher call to service to the people of Abia State. While also commending other candidates who contested in the election, Governor Ikpeazu urged them not to distract the incoming governor with court cases to enable him settle down and deal with the very demanding business of governance. The governor pledged to put in place every necessary measure to ensure a seamless transition. Staying with the elections, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, is asking the Presidential Election Petition Court in Abuja to declare him the winner of the February 25th presidential election or order a rerun between him and the president-elect Senator Bola Tinubu. In the alternative, he wants the entire election nullified and a fresh one conducted. He is challenging the election on 4 grounds, which are that the election of Senator Tinubu is invalid by reason of non-compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act 2022 and also invalid by reason of electoral corrupt practices.
The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, was able to meet the deadline to file his petition against the presidential election that produced Senator Bola Tinubu as the president-elect. Just like the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Obi is asking the Presidential Election Petition Court in Abuja to declare him the winner of the February 25th presidential election or order a rerun between him and the president-elect. The other alternative is for the entire exercise to be nullified and a fresh one conducted.
Martial assistance training.
The petition also states that Senator Tinubu was not duly elected by the majority of lawful votes cast, and at the time of the election, he was not qualified to contest the election in the first place. They're also praying the court for the following: that it may be determined that the president-elect was not duly elected by the majority of lawful votes cast in the election, and therefore the declaration and return of him by INEC as the winner of the presidential election is unlawful, wrong, unconstitutional, and void. They also want to determine that the return of Senator Tinubu by INEC was unlawful, having not satisfied the requirements of the Electoral Act of 2022 and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, which requires that he scores nothing less than 1/4 of the lawful votes cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all the states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. That it should be determined that Senator Tinubu was, at the time of the election, not qualified to contest the said election.
that it should be determined that Mr. Atiku Abubakar, having scored the majority of lawful votes cast at the presidential election, be returned as the winner of the said election and sworn in as the duly elected president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In the alternative, he is asking the court for an order directing INEC to conduct a runoff between him and Senator Tinubu. That the election to the office of the President of Nigeria, held on February the 25th, 2023, be nullified and a fresh election be ordered. No date has been fixed for the commencement of the hearing.
Meanwhile, following the conclusion of the general elections, the President-elect Senator Bola Tinubu has traveled abroad to rest and plan his transition program ahead of the May the 29th, 2023 inauguration. A statement by his office explains that the President-elect left the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, for Europe last night. It added that Senator Tinubu decided to take a break after the hectic campaign and election season to rest in Paris and in London, preparatory to going to Saudi Arabia for Umrah, that's the Lesser Hajj, and the Ramadan fasting that begins on Thursday. It states the President-elect is expected back in the country soon. The governor of Rivers State, Wike, has been responding to a range of issues bordering on his role in the 2023 general elections. They include his posture towards the Labour Party during the presidential election, the future of Rivers State, and the PDP. He shared his position during a media chat in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital.
It's been over 3 weeks since the presidential election, and following the announcement of the results by the electoral umpire, politicians and other Nigerians have been stating their positions on the outcome. For the Rivers State Governor, Wike, the choice of the people to support a southern governor has been realized. He expressed this view during a media chat at his residence in Port Harcourt.
I never told Rivers people to vote for the candidate of it. I told Rivers people to vote for the unity of Nigeria. As far as Rivers is concerned, their position was that, look, we want a power shift. And there are two candidates from the south, and Aswaji Bola Tinubu and Peter.
He speaks more about allegations of him rigging the elections in favor of the APC candidate.
It's unfortunate for anybody to use the word rig. I don't work for INEC. I don't have INEC documents with me. I'm not an ad hoc staff of INEC. And so I'm not in a place to rig election for anybody. It's when you have the materials of INEC that you can now talk about rigging. But I take exception to P2B's comment that I came out against him. People are not being sincere, people are not being, people are not appreciative. In 2019, asked P2B, I was one of the teams that chose P2B to be the vice presidential candidate of Elijah Tugambaka.
The governor also shares his views on INEC participation in the 2023 general election when compared to previous elections in the country.
In every election, there are some improvements. You have said about hitches here, which means there are some problems. And so, if you have problems, there's technology. You cannot say that it was intentional. Now, for me, the introduction of divas, for me, has reduced the level of violence in Nigerian electoral system. But for the divas that was introduced by INEC, what you are saying today would have been a different thing. Because today, even if you go and hijack material, when you hijack material, what will you do with it?
With his views now made known, citizens now have more information to aid their assessment of the performing governor, as he is popularly called.
In part two, after the break, UK government condemns incidents of violence and voter suppression at many voting locations in the just concluded general elections, vows readiness to take action against perpetrators of electoral violence. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 live on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. Dr. Alex O.T. wins Abia state governorship election after polling 175,467 votes to defeat his closest rival, Okeahiwe of the People's Democratic Party, who polled 88,529 votes. PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar asked the election tribunal to declare him as winner of the 2023 presidential poll, as he and the PDP formally filed a petition against Tinubu's victory. President-elect Bola Tinubu embarks on a trip to Europe to rest and plan his transition program ahead of his inauguration on May the 29th. The Labour Party governorship candidate in the March 18th election in Lagos State, Mr. Gbadebo Rhodes Viver, has asked Lagos residents not to voice out what he called an evil act allegedly done on the Labour Party in the state. While speaking to journalists today in Lagos, Mr. Viver explains that violence was used by party opponents to disenfranchise eligible voters in Lagos. All right, let's head to the nation's capital of Abuja, where Linda Akibe is standing by. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Ayotunde. Now, staying with politics. In Kano State, the APC today once again protested the result of last Saturday's governorship election in the state, calling on the state resident electoral commissioner to be removed immediately. Presenting a letter to the representative of the INEC REC, the legal advisor to the state chapter of the party, Mr. Abdullahi Fage, demanded that the election be reviewed. Our correspondent Sadiq Ilyasu has more.
3 days after the announcement of the Kano State governorship election result, tension still lingers as the All Progressives Congress, APC, organizes a peaceful protest. Despite armed security men guarding the routes leading to the office of the Independent National Electoral Commission, the protesters broke through. We are here at the Independent National Electoral Commission's INEC headquarters in Kano State, where the APC supporters trooped to come and protest against what they call an injustice after the announcement of the result. You can see the security officials, especially the police, are lined up here and they prevented the supporters from entering the INEC office. The protesters are demanding that the election results be reviewed and the immediate removal of the state resident electoral commissioner.
The essence of this letter centrally is that we are demanding for immediate removal of the Kano State Resident Electoral Commissioner, taking it and to revisit review whatever transferred on the day of the election and on the day the collation was made and on the day the return and declaration was made. That is simply what is content. And all the attachment in respect of the earlier letters we sent to the national are herewith attached with this main letter.
The representative of the Commission's REC, Mr. Lawal Sani, who received the letter, promised prompt action to their demands.
You have now presented your grievances, which we will collect and definitely we will forward as usual. So thank you very much for presenting your grievances, and I assure you all necessary actions will be taken. Thank you very much.
The protesters left the INEC headquarters hoping for a positive response in their favor. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, in spite of improvements around election logistics by INEC during the governorship and state houses of assembly elections, there were incidents of violence and voter suppression in numerous voting locations, and that's according to the UK government. In a statement, the British High Commissioner says it sent teams to Benue, Enugu, Kano, Lagos, Oyo and Rivers State to observe the polls and acknowledged that more polling units opened on time with BVAS and IREV working and results uploaded in real time from polling units and collation centers. It adds, however, that the observation team witnessed cases of vote buying, vote intimidation, destruction and hijacking of election materials, and the general disruption of the process in numerous states, as well as observed incidents of harassment of journalists. According to the UK government, through its Minister of State for Development in Africa, Andrew Mitchell, the UK is prepared to take action against those who engage in or incite electoral violence and other anti-democratic behaviours. An action could include preventing people from obtaining UK visas or imposing sanctions under a human rights sanctions regime. The UK government pledged its commitment to strengthening the ties between the two countries, including supporting democratic development in Nigeria. In other stories, sustainable and equitable access to safe drinking water remains a challenge in Nigeria. And that's according to UNICEF Nigeria Chief of WASH, Mrs. Jane Bevan, who made the revelation at the launch of a 2022 World Water Report. She called for urgent action to address the water crisis in Nigeria. Our correspondent Victoria Longjohn reports.
Water is an integral part of human existence, as it is essential for every human activity. A call to action towards active measures to address the water and sanitation crisis is the basis of this year's World Water Day celebration. The United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund is releasing a report on World Water Day. According to the report, 78 million children are at high risk of water-related crises such as waterborne diseases, malnutrition and poor sanitation. Nigeria is one of the 10 countries with the heaviest burden of child deaths from diseases caused by inadequate water, sanitation and hygiene. These diseases include dysentery, typhoid fever, cholera and hepatitis A. Hence, the call for increased investment in water provision across the country.
But this is really an opportunity to have a call to action for increased water coverage in Nigeria. It's estimated that 78 million children in Nigeria are suffering from poor water access at the moment, and it is the children who suffer.
Nigeria also ranks second out of 163 countries globally with the highest risk of exposure to climate and environmental threats. According to the report, water unavailability means less for agriculture production, which in turn leads to food scarcity, and that is a threat to food security and nutrition.
Our current trend, an additional 35% in water resources will be needed by 2050 to meet the growing demand for food, fiber and feeds. This is highly worrying for effort to end hunger and poverty, because there can be no food and agriculture and livelihood in support without clean and sufficient water.
Water for all implies that the elderly, disabled, marginalized and the poor people get access to clean drinking water and proper sanitation in line with Sustainable Development Goals 6.1 and 6.2.
The United Nations is advocating increased collaboration between the government and the private sector to ensure more investment in water provision. Victoria Longjohn, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, the Nigeria LNG Limited joins the United Nations group to reduce methane emissions and pursue decarbonization. That's on Business News. Join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has struck out the federal government's suit seeking to recover and forfeit the sum of 70 trillion naira it alleged was stashed in 29 bank accounts by some looters. Justice Peter Lifu held that the federal government's lawyers and the private lawyers did not diligently prosecute the case. The judge expressed shock that the plaintiff, counsel, senior advocates of Nigeria, Mr. Mohammed Indarani and Mr. Femi Falano, suddenly developed cold feet over this alleged public interest case. Delivering judgment at a substantive suit, the judge criticized the federal government for not diligently prosecuting the case. The government filed the suit through an ex parte motion of August 5th, 2021, before Justice Tijani Ringim during the court's annual vacation. And staying with the courts, Justice Wike of the Federal High Court Abuja has dismissed an application filed by the suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police, Abia, seeking an order dismissing the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency's charges against him. In a ruling, Justice Wike held that the court had the exclusive right and jurisdiction to hear drug-related cases as enshrined in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the NDLEA Act. Abia and his co-accused had prayed the court to strike out the criminal charges against them on the grounds that the suit was incompetent. They urged the court to stop their trial because they had not been subjected to the internal disciplinary action of the Nigeria Police Council and the Police Service Commission as provided by the Constitution. Justice Wike, however, held that the powers of the Police Service Commission did not supersede the powers of the Federal High Courts. And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Ayotunde.
Many thanks, Linda. To the persisting cash crunch in the country, the Nigeria Labour Congress, that's the NLC, has directed all workers to protest at all the offices of the Central Bank of Nigeria nationwide next week. NLC President Comrade Joe Ajero, who briefed journalists in Abuja, says mobilization for the exercise will commence on Friday, while the total shutdown of economic activities across the nation will begin next Wednesday, next week, of course. The NLC had on March the 13th this year issued a 7-day ultimatum to the federal government to cushion the effect of the cash crunch and fuel scarcity crisis or face industrial action by workers. Development Bank of Nigeria says it's committed to creating a better future for women in digital technology. The managing director of the bank, Mr. Tony Okwanachi, made the commitment when the bank marked the 2023 International Women's Day. Mr. Okwanachi adds that the bank wants to support more skilled technology development for women.
The fourth celebration of the International Women's Day by the Development Bank of Nigeria is geared towards recognizing and celebrating the achievements of the Nigerian woman while facilitating a platform to drive conversations on gender equality. This year's theme is Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality, and the bank is committing to create more opportunities for Nigerian women.
At DBN, we believe that innovation is key to driving gender equality. We recognize and celebrate the unique contributions that women bring to technology space, and we are committed to creating a workplace where women can thrive and succeed. We acknowledge the fact that there's still much more work to be done in this regard. Therefore, we must continue to challenge gender biases and promote diversity in all aspects of our lives. We must join our hands together to close gender disparity and provide more opportunities for women to gain the skills they need to succeed in the digital economy.
We do not have a very good cash credit rating agency for ourselves. The credit rating agency results are only shared at the level of banks. They're not in the public domain. Now, we need to get to the system, and I will also challenge the Development Bank of Nigeria, that for us to be able to get the credibility that's required and for people to be more bankable, we need to get the credit rating in the public domain.
For the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, the current naira scarcity is adversely affecting women.
Unfortunately, the opportunities of the digital revolution also presents a risk of perpetuating existing patterns of gender inequality as we currently experiencing with the new monetary policy as we go cashless. As good as the policy is, in the long run, the immediate concern is the growing inequalities which are becoming increasingly evident in the context of digital skills and access to technologies, with women being left behind.
A stage play to further drive home the message is presented as the bank hopes to continue to make contributions to the growth of women in the country.
The chairman of Harris Holdings and United Bank for Africa, Mr. Tony Elumelu, turns 60 today. And that is why his friends, family and associates converged on Lagos today to hold a symposium in honor of the renowned banker and businessman to celebrate one of Nigeria's finest captains of industry.
The leadership instinct of Moses, the faith of Abraham, wisdom of Solomon.
He is one of Africa's most accomplished and consummate bankers with a career spanning decades. A philanthropist who is passionate about democratizing opportunity for young people across the continent. And March the 22nd every year is significant for the chairman of Heirs Holdings and United Bank for Africa, Mr. Tony Onyemaichi Elumelu, who is celebrating his 60th birthday with a symposium in Lagos.
Tony Onyemaichi Elumelu, as you glide into your 6th decade, bury your worry at sundown. Dance the night away to the tune of Nightingale.
Taking turns, beneficiaries of the Tony Elumelu Foundation eulogize the man empowering African entrepreneurship and catalyzing development.
The hospital canteens, the school canteens, and all others who consume our eggs on a daily basis say thank you. Africa is shining because of your efforts.
I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you very much for what you do for African youth.
And then the special message from the former president of the United States, Mr. Bill Clinton.
It's been inspiring for us to see your passion for philanthropy up close and to watch you as you empower a rising generation of entrepreneurs across Africa. So on this milestone, we want to say thanks. Thank you for your friendship, for your good work, for your unwavering belief in a better tomorrow.
Virtually and physically, his children celebrate their father.
I think he likes to say that me and my siblings have seen him finish. So this is always a really nice reminder. Yes, okay. But yeah, Daddy, I hope you have a great day, and thank you very much for all the love and support that, you give to me and my sisters and brothers.
His lovely wife shares what this moment means to the man everyone here is celebrating.
On behalf of myself, on behalf of the children, on behalf of everyone here, for what you do for you make each and every one of us feel like your own personal person. So thank you very much, and God bless you always.
Anthony Onyemaichi Elumelu, CFR, is also an economist who was listed by Times Magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2020. The Jos-born businessman is an alumni of former Bendel State University and the University of Lagos. He started his banking career with the defunct All States Trust Bank, where he rose through the ranks, and now chairs Heirs Holdings, an investment holding company in Nigeria with investment interest in various sectors in Africa.
Right, for the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Peter Mbah, has been declared the winner in the Enugu governorship election, defeating his closest rival, Chijioke Edeoga of the Labour Party. Well, the announcement of the result is coming 4 days after the governorship elections held across the country on Saturday, March the 18th. It's now time for business news with Anne Waldo.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. Hello and welcome to Business News. The Nigeria LNG Limited has joined the Oil and Gas Methane Partnership, a partnership coordinated by the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP, to reduce methane emissions and improve the accuracy and transparency of methane emissions reporting. Well, according to the NLNG, the MOU signed in 2022 demonstrates the company's commitment to decarbonization. Its company says that it is already implementing a comprehensive program for reporting and reducing its methane emissions, utilizing the latest industry technologies to track its progress and its performance. The gas company also stresses that the decarbonization journey will strengthen customers' and stakeholders' trust in the company's ability to take responsibility for the environment as well as remain competitive. The federal government has launched 6 regulations to govern the activities of the midstream and downstream sectors of the Nigerian petroleum industry. The regulations presented by the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority include regulation of operations, natural gas pipeline tariffs, gas pricing, and domestic demand. According to the NMDPRA, these regulations aim to promote industry growth and best practices among industries enshrined in the Petroleum Industry Act. We head to the equities market now, where it sustained yesterday's positive performance. The color is green today. Investors are still eyeing stocks of GTCO and FBN Holdings. Kelly Agiga has the details.
Well, thank you for joining us here on the Stock Market Report at this time. And yes, the NGX was able to sustain the positive trend from Tuesday's trading session. But let's do you some of the details of as the oil share index, of course, rose further by 0.06%, closing in the green. We check out the market cap for today's trading session as well, closing at 29.927 trillion naira, boosted of course by GTCO and FBN Holdings. However, most of the key sectors we tracked didn't deliver an upbeat tune except for insurance index. We see it here closing in the green, 0.08%. On the flip side of things, the banking sector closing in the red, 0.01%. And of course, consumer goods closing also in the red, 0.02%. Let's see the top gainers for today. I mentioned earlier, GTCO rose by 2.44%, closing by 25 naira 20 kobo. Closely followed, of course, by Coronation Insurance, closing at 2.44%, and of course followed by Link Insurance at 2.22%. Let's turn to the underperforming stocks as the NCR Nigeria led the losers chart. It closes there at 6.69%. And of course, negative sentiments, it does appear, is beginning to creep back into the market as we had more losers than gainers. But let's hope investors stay bullish tomorrow. That does it for us here at the Stock Market Report. At this time, I am Kelly Egiga. It's back to you.
That's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Mwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Ayotsunde.
Many thanks, Anne. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has returned to the front line near Bakhmut, where fighting has raged for months. And the devastated city has long been a focal point of the war, as Russian forces try to revive their military campaign in the east. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international stories and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. President Volodymyr Zelensky has visited Ukrainian troops in the Donetsk region to meet soldiers on the front line in Bakhmut. I am honored to be here today. I am really grateful to you, to all of you, he said. After receiving awards, the soldiers spoke to the president and took photographs with him. He also appeared on video visiting and awarding wounded servicemen in hospital. French President Emmanuel Macron has given a defiant defense of his decision to force through a rise in the pension age in the face of protests across France and 2 no-confidence votes.
Est-ce que vous pensez que j'aurais pas pu faire comme tant avant moi, mettre la poussière sous le tapis?
Oui. This reform isn't a luxury, it's not a pleasure, it's a necessity, he said. Protesters have been emboldened by the government's use of constitutional power to ram through reforms without a vote in the National Assembly. A 9th round of strikes and national protests have been staged today. A Russian missile strike caught on camera on a residential building in Zaporizhia has killed 1 person and injured 33. This incredible camera phone footage showing one of the missiles smashing into the building. 2 children were among those injured. Here, the devastation after the explosions with 2 9-story residential buildings damaged. President Zelensky said Russia was shelling the city with bestial savagery. Boris Johnson has faced a committee of MPs over whether he intentionally misled Parliament over lockdown-era parties. Mr. Johnson was photographed on numerous occasions breaking his own lockdown rules during the COVID pandemic. The committee hearing started with the former Prime Minister taking an oath on the Bible, something that is rare for such proceedings. The ex-Prime Minister accepts that he misled the Commons but denies he did so on purpose, arguing that he relied on the advice of senior staff.
There were a number of days over a period of 20 months when gatherings took place in Downing Street that went past the point where they could be said to be necessary for work purposes. That was wrong. I bitterly regret it. I understand public anger, and I continue to apologise for what happened on my watch, and I take full responsibility. But as you've just said, Chair, the purpose of this inquiry is not to reopen so-called Partygate. I'm here to say to you, hand on heart, that I did not lie to the House. When those statements were made, they were made in good faith and on the basis of what I honestly knew and believed at the time. When this inquiry was set up, I was completely confident that you would find nothing to show I knew or believed anything else, as indeed you have not.
Live broadcasts on television have been disrupted after the effects of a magnitude 6.5 earthquake in Afghanistan were felt in Pakistan. An anchor on the Pashto channel, Mashriq TV, appeared to remain calm as he continued to announce that a strong quake was shaking Peshawar and adjoining areas. At least 13 people were killed and more than 90 injured in Pakistan and Afghanistan after the earthquake struck late on Tuesday. 25 people were injured when a ship came off its holding and tipped on its side in Scotland, with 15 people taken to hospital. The incident happened at a dry dock in Leith. 10 people were treated and discharged at the scene. 5 ambulances, an air ambulance, 3 trauma teams and other specialist responders had earlier attended the scene. And Tokyo locals and foreign tourists have gathered in Ueno Park to enjoy cherry blossoms in full bloom, as the city lifted its ban on gatherings in the park this year for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. Many visitors to Ueno Park, one of Japan's most popular cherry blossom viewing spots, were seen having picnics under trees and taking pictures. Warm weather ushered in the full bloom 9 days sooner than usual in the capital, and one of the earliest in recorded history. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Herman, and welcome to Sports News. Nigeria's under-23 team, the Olympic Eagles, were this evening held to a goalless draw by Guinea in the first leg of the under-23 Africa Cup of Nations final qualifying fixture played at the Moshood Abiola National Stadium in Abuja. In the 28th minute, Timilaye Oguniyi rocked the crossbar from a free kick 20 yards out of the right. But that turned out to be the major effort of the Olympic Eagles in a tepid game that did not quite live up to its billing. Now, Super Eagles coach Joseph Posero says the team is taking nothing for granted when they host Guinea-Bissau in Africa's the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier at the MK Abiola Stadium in Abuja. At the team's media parley, the coach, Posero, told Channels Television that his aim is to win Nigeria's 4th AFCON title. And to achieve that, the 3-time African champions must be at the continent's biggest football showpiece in Côte d'Ivoire next year. And that's it on Sports News. I'm Jeffrey Uzong, is back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Jeffrey. And the main news again. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, today declared the Labour Party governorship candidate, Dr. Alex Otti, as winner of the Abia State governorship election. Dr. Otti polled 175,467 votes to defeat his closest rival, Oke Ahiwe of the PDP, who scored 88,529 votes. We also told you that the candidate of the PDP, Mr. Peter Mba, has been declared winner in the Enugu state governorship election. Mr. Mba polled 160,895 votes to defeat his closest rival, Chijioke Edeoga of the Labour Party, who polled 157,552 votes. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde. Good night.